Hey, welcome back, everybody. Good Monday. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful start to the week and kind of the last week of October in a sense. Now, we'll have another day or two the following week, but all things considered, really beginning to round out the month here and say goodbye to kind of the more fall like times of the year. Although November definitely is fall for sure, but you know how it is. The second November first hits, the Christmas trees start going up, and every time you go into any store, it's kind of Christmas stuff everywhere. So I think definitely October is probably the bigger fall month of the year, and it has Halloween as well. And all that stuff. But all things considered, this fall might have not felt like fall for a lot of folks. It has been quite warm this October for most folks, but I am tracking a couple of cold front opportunities here over the next week or so, some of which have trended stronger for some folks. We'll talk about who that is that could see that colder air, and then we're also going to talk about a pattern setting up here towards the end of the month and the start of November. I'm watching this pattern for the potential of multiple strong storm systems that could potentially cross the country and bring severe weather, or stormy weather, and maybe even some snowfall outside of the higher terrains. Now, unfortunately, that's not the only thing. We're also going to talk about the tropics, where we had a bit of a flare-up over the weekend, and there is the potential that we could have one last hurrah in the tropics here. I think kind of the end of October and start of November, and we'll break that down for you as well. Alrighty, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Like the video. Let me know where you're watching from. Let me know if you have any fun plans coming up. Personally, I'm just continuing to truck along with school, and yeah, that's what I'm doing. Nothing super exciting coming up, although our club is holding a Halloween party this Friday, so that'll be fun, I guess. But yeah, anyway, enough about me. Let's go ahead and start talking about the weather and get on into things. So, okay, starting with the tropics, as we normally do, and I promise you one day here soon enough, we will not start the video with the tropics because it will no longer be hurricane season. But until then, we do have to start with the tropics, and we will continue to do so. All right, current view at the kind of western half of the Atlantic, and you might be wondering, well, Gerald, why is it the past week you've only started here, you haven't shown the main development region of the Atlantic, and you've just kind of been zoomed into this region? Well, honestly, this is the only place we've really had active weather in the tropics, and you would expect that for this time of year. It's very often that the kind of areas east of this line back towards the main development region die off into October, and honestly, it never really even awoke this year. Most of our storm systems have kind of formed in this part of the Atlantic anyway, and this is also where we're watching for the potential of maybe another storm system in about a week or two, and again, not to jump the gun, we'll get there. But that's basically why we're starting in this region. And we do currently have a storm system, a tropical storm, which is Tropical Storm Oscar. And boy, oh boy, what a surprise Oscar was. This thing went from a 10% chance of development to a hurricane within about 24 hours. So definitely a missed one there by the models, and missed by me, missed by the National Hurricane Center, missed by everybody. So not that that is an excuse by any means, but still, it happens. You know, it's a science that is still growing. And every now and then we miss one. So there we go. Oscar, though, luckily beginning to finally weaken as it moves inland into Cuba, and will continue to stay weak, but could remain a tropical storm and kind of meander over the southern Bahamas for a little while before dying out as it moves out to sea. Now, other than that, nothing else really going on in the Atlantic currently. Now, there is a little bit of a wave that is going to try to work into the Caribbean, and that could become important here in about a week or so. Also, let me turn the ringer off on my phone here. But that could become important in about a week or so, but right now, no chance of development with that storm system either. All right, ladies from the National Hurricane Center here. Again, Oscar, only thing out there for the next 7 days, sitting at about 1,000 millibars, 45-mile-an-hour winds. Again, just kind of getting shredded by the terrain here over southern Cuba, which is a good thing. Well, maybe not for the folks there over southern Cuba, but good for everybody else that the storm is weakening. And yeah, that's, again, the only thing on the map for the next 7 days. Now, the latest cone for Oscar, again, was a Category 1 storm for a while there as it moved over some of the southern islands of the Bahamas. It made landfall yesterday evening at about 6 o'clock Eastern time. And has, since, again, weakened pretty significantly. It is expected to get back out over the open waters of the Atlantic within probably as early as this evening, and could maintain tropical storm status, maybe even re-strengthen slightly up to 50, maybe 60 miles an hour. But all things considered, just expecting a weak kind of rainy mess here to once again work back over the southern Bahamas. And we do have tropical storm warnings up in the blue and tropical storm watches in the yellow due to that kind of move over that region that is expected over the next couple of days. But again, luckily, Oscar was a surprise, but all things considered, not a super terrible storm. Definitely was a hurricane, made landfall as a hurricane, but was also a very tiny hurricane. So not many people really felt those hurricane force winds. All right, so just I'll show this really quickly. Not that I'm sure it's going to impact many of my viewers, but if you happen to be traveling to the Bahamas, or maybe you are watching from Cuba or the Bahamas, rainfall forecast for this storm system, a pretty good amount, 4 to 6 inches over the central Bahamas, and even kind of some of these southern islands. And then also still expecting a good amount of rain here over the extreme southeastern tip of the island of Cuba, where we could get upwards of a foot of rain here to come here in isolated spots. So definitely, a flooding threat for sure for you folks who are in that region. Just not really sure how many of you are probably watching from that area, but I figured I would mention it anyway. All right, so that is not the only thing that we need to talk about in the tropics. Again, I just showed you the 7-day outlook. There's nothing. However, I am watching the end of October and the start of November. We'll say October 25th through the first week of November for the potential of some development here in kind of the same region here through the Western Caribbean, same place that Helene formed, same place that Milton kind of began to get its act together in a sense, although that really happened over the Gulf, but still, it kind of originated from this region. And this Central American gyre has really been a big time story this year. And I think it will be something that we need to continue to watch. So here we go. This map shows you where we have rising air and sinking air. And this gets us into the let me actually back this up a little bit and kind of show you where we're at right now. So let's see here. Well, I guess this is as far out as it will go back. But anyway, okay. Yeah, so we'll start right here. This is this coming weekend, and the purple areas on your map show, again, areas of rising air. I guess orange colors on your map show the areas of sinking air. Now, rising air is conducive for tropical development when combined with warm ocean temperatures, a lack of wind shear, and moist air. And it looks like that could happen here again in the Caribbean. Specifically, the Western Caribbean is where we could see the highest overlaying of those ingredients towards the end of October and towards the start of November. So we're definitely going to watch for that. And you'll notice again that purple kind of hanging around there for a window, even getting into the first little bit of November. You'll notice all that purple hanging out there over the Western Caribbean and then about the 10 to 15 day time frame, and even getting down into the Gulf of Mexico as well. But probably going to see harsher conditions in the Gulf in terms of wind shear and dry air as we have all these fronts kind of working through the United States. But in the Caribbean, where those fronts are not quite digging as far south, we very well could see another storm form. And some of our models are hinting at that here in the long run. So this is the GFS model starting a week from right now. This is next Monday, October 28th. So just a couple days before Halloween. And again, watch this general region and watch this vorticity begin to kind of consolidate and become a little bit more hyperactive down here. And you'll notice we do get, again, just kind of this big, broad area of spin, this Central American gyre esque kind of system here in about 10 days from now. So this is Halloween itself. So again, 10 days from right now. And you'll notice it kind of spins there for a while, gets its act together, forms into a named storm, and then kind of moves around the Caribbean, moves into some of these islands, and then gets out to sea as a pretty strong storm system here for November standards. Again, this would be the first week of November. So obviously that model run doesn't bring anything into the United States. It doesn't show a landfalling hurricane. But we'll loop this for you. Again, this is starting about a week out and going to 10 plus days. The GFS and its ensemble members, you will note, do bring a good amount of some sort of deepening pressure here into the Western Caribbean. Now, does this get pulled north into the Gulf? Does this kind of just die over the Caribbean? Does this get pulled into Cuba, Hispaniola, Jamaica? All that, we just have absolutely no idea, to be honest with you right now. But it is something that we're going to want to watch, and the GFS is not the only one showing it. The Euro and its ensemble members, a similar story in that 7 to 15 day, especially 10 to 15 day time frame. kind of showing something trying to get its act together down into the Western Caribbean. And again, could get pulled north into the Gulf, not out of the question. But it's also possible that this just dies down here, or maybe it just doesn't even form at all in the first place. A lot more questions than answers currently, but that's kind of what we know here in the tropics, and just something I want you to keep an eye on and keep on the back burner. All right. So the tropics, obviously not the only thing we're going to talk about. Let's go ahead and dive into what's happening back home. Excuse me. Like I mentioned, there is the potential for a couple shots of cooler air, and then I think a transition to a much stormier pattern than what we're currently seeing as we end out October. But right now, I mean, we're all quiet. We've got this big time ridge flexing its muscles. Again, you'll notice kind of how the jet stream is oriented here. I'll kind of draw some arrows. The jet stream, again, moving through the west for sure. We're seeing some cloud cover there because of it, but then riding up into Canada and then kind of swinging back down through the northeastern United States with everyone under it, under calm conditions, except for this one little cutoff low that kind of got trapped under this ridge. But because of its placement under this ridge is not really going to be in favorable conditions to continue to strengthen, and thus is dying out. But we could see some strong storms today through portions of Kansas as this kind of swings on through here. And that will be something we need to watch before the storm system dies out completely going into our Tuesday and Wednesday. But that's when another storm system kind of picks up its energy, if you will, and will be something else that we need to monitor. All right, watches, warnings, and advisories in the east. Yep, nothing. If you're east of the Mississippi, I mean, really nothing ongoing. Maybe a little bit of fog this morning. We've got a couple showers off the Carolina coastline. These have moved into Florida occasionally over the past week here. And, maybe even a little bit of coastal flooding up here into the northern coast or the northeast coast of Florida, just due to strong onshore flow due to this high pressure we have. But, I mean, really, that's the most active weather we're getting east of the Mississippi currently. Now, over the central part of the country, a little bit of a more active story. Now, not a lot of watches and warnings. We do have some winter weather advisories over the mountains of Colorado. But we do also have some more stormy activity here over the morning hours through this part of the country. Let me move this all the way ahead into time because it's a little bit behind. You'll notice, again, this kind of storm system out here has brought some shower and storm activity, and especially storm activity on the southern tail of this. I mean, we've already got a severe thunderstorm or two this morning over the Texas Panhandle. Pretty healthy looking cells out here from kind of Woodward, Oklahoma, all the way back down towards Plainview, Texas, and Lubbock. Seeing some of these cells. And this afternoon, this could lead to a tornado threat as this moves into a more unstable environment here into portions of let's see here. Let me do directions in my head. Western Oklahoma and into kind of central Kansas. Again, I'll kind of draw the threat area because I forgot to pull it up. But anyone kind of in this black zone this afternoon could see a couple strong storms. So do need to watch that. That does include all threats. Again, tornadoes, large hail, strong straight line winds. So I would argue this is definitely the most active weather we're going to see today. Now we move it out west, and again, you'll notice active weather in the northeast, or excuse me, the northwest rather. This is due to that jet stream, again, just bringing a lot of divergence aloft here. So we are getting some rising motion. We're getting some onshore flow off the Pacific, and that is leading to some of these showers kind of beginning to form out this way. But all things considered, again, not anything severe by any means. So really the only active weather today in the central part of the country. All right, let's time this out for you in the near term, and then we'll look at the long term. But the near term, again, the story is going to be, like I said, this massive ridge over the east, not hard to find. Again, a little bit of a trough out of the Pacific Northwest. That is bringing some divergence. Again, that is helping to create some showers into that region where we have that sharp temperature gradient. And then obviously our cutoff low stuck here into Colorado that is going to bring the potential of a couple strong to severe storms this afternoon. So again, all of this kind of swings on through, but the next storyline is going to come during the middle of this week. We're going to have a pretty potent trough up into Canada here. And that trough axis is going to dig just far enough south into the northern United States through Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and then eventually dive into the northeast by the middle of this week. This is Thursday, and that'll bring shot number one of cool air. And then you'll notice a ridge flexes again right behind it, but then behind that, another trough gets going back into the Pacific Northwest, and that'll be cold shot number two. That could be a bit more potent and bring much more relief for those of us east of the Mississippi, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But first of all, let's kind of time out the rest of today for you folks. And we'll start in the west and then go to the east. And this is today and tomorrow, I should add. All right, this afternoon, again, just a whole lot of showers up into the Pacific Northwest, a lot of divergence aloft, creating that rising motion, and then plenty of Pacific moisture kind of combined with that rising motion. You're going to get some showers. Now, in the central part of the country, again, like we mentioned, a severe weather threat through Kansas, back down through Oklahoma, as we're going to get kind of this line of broken supercells to work on through. Again, all hazards on the table. Have a way to get those watches and warnings this afternoon, as I do expect some severe storms. We get into this evening and into the overnight. Again, this is about probably, we'll say, this is 8 o'clock Eastern. Again, the time at the top of your screen is in Eastern. Unfortunately, I can't change it, so we'll say this is about 3 o'clock Mountain Time. Excuse me, not 3 o'clock Mountain Time, 5 o'clock Mountain Time, 4 o'clock West Coast. Again, seeing these supercells working through that threat area from Oklahoma all the way up into Nebraska, and then continued showers and snow showers depending on your elevation into the Pacific Northwest. Now we move this further ahead into time. We get this into the overnight hours. Our severe weather threat dies down and some of those showers begin to calm down a little bit. But what I do want you to note here is this storm system that is working through the Pacific Northwest. You will note we do have some closed isobars in here. Overnight tonight and into tomorrow is going to kind of begin to work on through Idaho and Montana and set the stage for our next storm system. By the time we get into Tuesday here, you'll notice we do have kind of this troughing showing up, indicating a bit of a cold front. And it's hard to see, but we do have a storm system pretty far north up into Canada that is bringing this front with it. And again, that will be our next shot of cold air that kind of starts out west and then moves into the east. But by the time we get to Tuesday afternoon, much nicer conditions, still a couple areas of some scattered showers out into the Pacific Northwest, but then we get some ridging and high pressure to build in to the northern plains, bringing some slightly cooler air, but once again, bringing nicer conditions as we get that sinking air towards the surface associated with that high pressure. All right, what about the east? Well, this afternoon, I'm going to breeze on through this afternoon because we already talked about the plains, so again, you can still look there if you want, but elsewhere, nothing. I mean, again, a couple showers through the state of Florida, I think is really going to be the most rain we see east of the Mississippi this afternoon. Obviously, the severe weather threat, like I already mentioned, through Nebraska and Kansas and down into Oklahoma even. But other than that, really nothing this afternoon as high pressure continues to dominate the pattern. And then we get into tomorrow morning. Again, maybe a couple showers with whatever's left of that storm system. But you'll notice to the north, again, hard to see, but you'll notice these very close isobars. We have a storm system much further north into Canada. We have that front due to that storm system here that is working on through the plains, bringing some cooler, nicer air, and that could flare up maybe a couple more showers, here into the Midwest. But all things considered, not a very potent front for us. Now, up into Canada, it will be stronger. But really, the only precipitation we get clips kind of the northern bit of Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and into the UP of Michigan by overnight Thursday. We'll say Thursday afternoon into overnight Thursday. Again, seeing just enough lift here for some precipitation into this part of the country. But all things considered, remaining pretty calm and not really bringing a whole lot of active weather with that front. And then that gets us into Tuesday evening and into the overnight Tuesday into Wednesday. You'll notice things remain calm, but that front, again, working through here, bringing some, well, I cannot draw an arrow to save my life, sorry, bringing some drier, cooler air on the backside, and just enough lift that we are seeing some precipitation into the Great Lakes region here by Wednesday. Now, we'll move this further ahead into time with the GFS model, and you'll notice, here we go, this is Wednesday morning, this is Wednesday afternoon. That front, again, I'll keep saying it, the center of low pressure is quite far north up into Canada. So most of the precipitation is going to stay north with that. Again, into eastern Canada, into Ontario, Quebec, going to see some rain and even some backside snow. But we are going to get the cooler, nicer air out of this through the northeast. That'll swing on through. And then here's that high pressure that begins to work in by Thursday. That'll cool things down. That'll bring some drier air. But you'll notice behind it, more troughing showing up, another storm system developing, and the potential for another shot of cold air by the time we get into the weekend that I think could be even stronger than that shot of cold air. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. We'll move this further out ahead into time. This is Wednesday afternoon. Again, this is our first trough. This is our first shot of cold air. You'll notice that blue clipping into Michigan, and then even getting into the Northeast by this Thursday. But at the same time, as that's happening, another trough building out west, another storm system trying to form here, and that will eventually deepen by the time we get into later on next week. Now, you'll notice that first little bit kind of dies off over the plains, but above it, a much bigger, larger, stronger trough begins to form. And this dives quite far south and gets pretty strong or pretty feisty here by Sunday, or Saturday into Sunday, I should say. Really nice below average cool temperatures dig all the way down into the northeastern United States. Again, going to make it feel a lot more like fall, maybe even borderline winter in places by this coming weekend. And then that kind of swings on through, and behind it, about a week from now, another big ridge builds out into the west. That takes its place, moves into the east, but at the same time, a big pattern change, I guess is a better way to word it. A big flip. We've got ridging in the east, troughing out west, and this is the pattern I'm watching again towards the very end of October into the start of November for the potential of some much larger, more impressive storm system. So just to explain this to you, again, this big pocket of cold air here, oftentimes what happens is we get low pressure to form on the diverging side of these troughs, and if that happens here, on that diverging side, we'll have, well, obviously a storm system, but that'll be a storm system that could likely tap into a lot of warm, moist feed out of the Gulf of Mexico. This could lead to severe weather as well as maybe snow on the north side as this gets into that cold pocket. So I am watching again towards the Halloween timeframe for the potential of a much more feisty storm system than maybe what we are currently seeing out there with these weaker storms that have kind of crossed the country. All right, so what could this look like on radar? Well, we will start into the middle of the week. This is that first storm system. Again, you'll notice that swings on through, brings a little bit of precipitation to the northeast with that first shot of cold air. Now, here comes our second shot of cold air. You'll notice a storm system trying to form here by the middle and end of this coming week. This could bring some shower and storm activity to the Midwest and to the Great Plains, but that storm kind of struggles to really intensify into anything else as it loses some of that upper level support. But as that does lose its upper level support, our trough becomes much more amplified and a new storm system kind of takes its place again up into Canada, seeing the center of low pressure there. But the front associated with this low pressure will bring some showers to many of us. Again, I think through the Great Lakes, you'll see this is, let me get that off your screen, sorry. This is, let me back this up. Okay, so this is Friday morning. Again, some showers working on through. Saturday morning, some showers working on through the Northeast. And again, could bring enough that definitely is notable in the rain department. And then that cold air funnels in quickly behind. And I think on the backside of this weekend storm and that kind of cold front, that's when we'll have the highest chance for some higher elevation snowfall, maybe a little bit of lake effect precipitation. Some of these isobars are indicating just enough flow across the lakes, especially kind of through New York and Pennsylvania, that we could see some lake effect precipitation out of this, and it very well would be, probably the first big lake effect snow event if we can get that to form. Again, it'll really depend on the exact angle of kind of this trough and how that moves over, but should that bring lake effect precipitation, I'll let you know. And then after that, again, that brings much cooler air. We see high pressure over the east indicating nicer conditions and overall probably cooler conditions behind that front. And then here we go into the 28th of October. And this is going to set the stage, again, I think, for potentially a bigger storm system. And kind of walk you through it. We've got cool high pressure in the east. We've got this big trough out west. And then we have a storm system beginning to form in between. And the flow around this high pressure is like this. So what's happening is it's warming up big time here into the plains at this point. I'll kind of draw it here for you. It's warming up big into this region. Well, let me pick a different color, sorry. And I just erased everything off the screen. Whatever, sorry. We're getting a big warm up for the third time into the central part of the country. And as that's happening, we're getting a big cool down in the west due to that trough. So because of that, we're getting these very sharp isobars that will likely kick up the wind for sure and also support cyclogenesis into this region. And what happens next on the European is exactly that. A big storm forms it begins to get its act together, a much lower pressure storm system than we've seen thus far this fall. And we begin to see some storm activity form, and a couple different storms form off of that. And again, could potentially lead to a pretty big Halloween storm into that time frame. Now, obviously, give or take a couple days, but definitely something I'm watching and something I'm pretty confident in that is going to happen. All right, snowfall through the next 10 days. Again, out west in the Rockies, plenty of snow with all of those storm systems that you've had into the Northeast. Again, this weekend, I think some higher elevation snowfall is definitely a possibility. Maybe even a little bit of lake effect snow. We can't rule that out. But you'll notice as we go 10 to 15 days out, that snow begins to increase out here into the plains, where a storm system, again, could throw some precipitation back into that cold air and lead to some sort of winter storm outside of the higher elevations. Which I will continue to monitor. All right, rainfall-wise, this is through the next 7 days or so. Again, dry for most of us, but just enough precipitation here into the Midwest, into the Great Lakes, and down into the plains, and then obviously a ton back out into the Pacific Northwest that, again, could see rain in those areas. But outside of there, I mean, just bone dry for many of us here over the next 7 days. But as we get to 10 days out, notice these last couple frames, that big blow up in precipitation over the central part of the country. Again, I think whatever storm system we do get could, start to show up in about that 10-day time frame, and obviously would bring precipitation. Now, exactly where that happens and all is still up for debate, but probably starting somewhere in the central part of the country. And this one could track east and bring some rain to folks that really need it. We will just have to kind of wait and see, though. Alrighty, temperature-wise, let me back this up for you. So again, early this week, well above average temperatures kind of moving in. This is this Tuesday, this is this Wednesday. But then here's that first shot of cold air. You'll notice much more average-like temperatures by Thursday through the Northeast and into the Mid-Atlantic, while we remain warm out into the plains and the Deep South. But then we get that second shot of cold air here, and you'll notice much more blue taking over by this weekend and into early next week. Here through the east, probably a much nicer shot of cool air for sure. And then behind that, we warm up again, and this is what sets the stage for that next storm system. Big time warm up in the east, big time cool down into the west. Kind of that big battleground between these air masses, and then a likely storm system. Let me again pick a color you can see, sorry. And then likely storm system to form somewhere in between, and latching onto these air masses to create likely severe weather and snow of some sort, again in that 10-day time frame. Then you'll notice that kind of begins to, or just continues onward for a while. So that's what I've got for you here on this Monday. Kind of a long video, but again, things kind of picking up in the tropics and the continental U.S. over the long term. So definitely feel like there's a good bit to talk about. Alrighty, folks. Well, with that said, if you enjoyed the video, let me know by hitting that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Have a good start to the week out there, and I'll see you all tomorrow.